I think what you say is really interesting because I know this from my time in automotive. A lot of the Chinese model is Chinese companies will buy up manufacturing facilities here and in other countries.
Chinese state-owned companies?
Chinese companies, but they're all state-owned. So you have a Chinese company buy out another factory. Or I will use this example, and I won't use their name, but there is a glass manufacturer that is a Chinese glass manufacturer. They came to the U.S. and bought one of the biggest float glass operations in the country and restored it and got it running. And then they also bought fabrication sites to make auto glass. What they do, and so the company that I was working for was an auto glass manufacturer.
They were a Japanese company, right?
Was a Japanese-owned company. The factories in the Tennessee area were from the beginning of that partnership. It started as a partnership, I think, with some of the Japanese automakers, and then they bought the float glass plant in Nashville, Tennessee, which was formerly a Ford-owned site. Ford used to own their own glass plants and their own processes. And then eventually they got out of the business, and you had a Tier 1 coming in. Anyways, the whole point is the Chinese companies will come in and they'll buy these plants, and then they'll start bidding for business. And they bid the business at a loss. Because it doesn't matter if they lose money, China will subsidize them to keep them running. The whole game is it's a long game for the 5 to 10 years. If you keep winning all these bids, then you can keep building these plants, buying more capital equipment so you're better off. And then little by little, you put each of those other companies out of business because they can't compete. So they lose the program. So you're bidding for, the Toyota Camry windshield. And these guys are coming in at $20 cheaper per windshield, and everybody else that bid on it was within $1 or $2 of each other. You got to say, well, how's that possible? How can they be that much cheaper? And they'll go in and they'll inspect the process and they'll say, well, it looks like they can do it. Looks like their samples are good and everything else. And then they win that bid, and now you do that enough times, and you're going to put one of those businesses out. Each couple rounds of bids, they're just going to say, we can't keep operating anymore. So once you take over the market share because you put everybody out of business with your low rates, now you own the industry. And now you can do whatever you want. So it's the same thing they've done in drug manufacturing with all the generics and everything like that. We get to a point where it's like, yeah, we don't want to do that here. We'll just ship it over and have China do it. Or we don't want to do that here. We'll just send it over to Vietnam. And once we've done that, and to your point, now that we've done that for 20 or 30 years, you get to the point where it's like, well, we couldn't make it. We couldn't do it if we tried now. So they have the market cornered at this point. So we are dependent on them for pretty much everything.
So between that being a way to dry up our own industry and what we voluntarily do to ourselves to self-limit in the name of the environment, we will impose a regulation upon ourselves that we don't expect of the rest of the world.
Because they want us to lead by example. That's what typical liberals will say. Is that we should lead by example.
Okay, I don't face value people a whole lot. I don't believe they mean that.
That's what they say.
I don't care what people say.
Well, that's what
you have to learn.
I'm just saying. That's what Bill Maher said on.
Okay, Bill Maher's a disingenuous piece of shit. He's probably the most decent liberal on the planet, and I still think he's a hypocritical piece of shit.
Yeah.
He doesn't exist in the real world where anything actually matters to him that he cares about. He can say he does. That's great. Good for Bill Maher. Don't care. I mean, what's the point?
Make sure we get that one.
That's there.
Yeah, that's an Instagram clip.
Josie, go check and make sure the camera's still on.
But no, I mean, there's no point in using that. Grounding the basis of any argument you have with that as your diametric opposition is just a waste of time, because then you have to fill all that gap with viable material. That's not necessary. Our regulation is heavily influenced by outside lobbying. Okay? Who owns most of our manufacturing? People who can afford to lobby. So at this point, everything that you do that those people can already absorb their own losses on is great. Everything you can do that drives our own prices up is great. Guess what's going to happen to you in about 5 to 10 years? We're going to lose almost every good refrigerant on the planet. We've already said it's going to happen. So all you guys sitting back on old air conditioners, good luck, folks.
Hey, can you help me get a new air conditioner, by the way?
And
I think I need to do one for the upstairs separate.
Yeah, it is warm in here. It's balmy.
Always.
But